Hi everyone. In the previous session we have discussed nutrition process. Now in this session we will discuss respiration process. So let's begin. Respiration is the process by which food is burnt in the cells of the body with the help of oxygen to release energy. So what is the process of respiration? It is a process by which the food is burnt in the cells with the help of oxygen to release energy. Now let me ask you one question. Where does the respiration occur in cells? If you know the answer, please comment. The energy released during respiration is used to make ATP molecules, that is adenosine triphosphate, from ADP molecules, that is adenosine diphosphate and inorganic phosphate. The energy is stored in the cells in the form of ATP molecules. So energy is stored in the cells in the form of ATP molecules. When the cells need energy, ATP is broken down in the presence of water to form ADP and then energy is released. Now let's understand the two types of respiration, that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is the respiration where oxygen is required, whereas anaerobic respiration is where there is no need of oxygen. So it takes place in the absence of oxygen. So let's understand the difference between aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen. So in the process of aerobic respiration, oxygen is required. Anaerobic respiration, oxygen is not required. In aerobic respiration, more energy is released, whereas in anaerobic respiration, less energy is released. Aerobic respiration takes place in cytoplasm and mitochondria of a cell, whereas anaerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. Complete oxidation of glucose takes place in aerobic respiration, whereas incomplete oxidation of glucose takes place in anaerobic respiration. The end products of aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water. The end products of anaerobic respiration are ethanol and carbon dioxide. Aerobic respiration occurs in most of the organisms. Anaerobic respiration occurs in bacteria, yeast and certain tissues of higher organisms. Example, in humans, during vigorous exercise, when the demand for the oxygen is more than the supply, then the muscle cells respire anaerobically, and this happens for some time. The equation for aerobic respiration is that glucose breaks down to form pyruvate. Pyruvate releases carbon dioxide, water and energy. Anaerobic respiration, giving an example in yeast cell, glucose breaks down to pyruvate. It forms ethanol, water and energy. In muscle cells, glucose breaks down to pyruvate to form lactic acid and energy. Now breakdown of the glucose by various pathways. Glucose in the presence of oxygen in cytoplasm of the cell breaks down to form pyruvate and energy is released. Now this pyruvate in the presence of oxygen in mitochondria of the cell gives carbon dioxide, water and energy. That is aerobic respiration. Whereas anaerobic respiration, that is in the absence of oxygen, in the muscle cells it gives lactic acid and energy. Again, in the absence of oxygen in yeast cell it gives ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Respiration in humans. The main organs of respiratory system in human beings are, it begins with nostrils, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs and diaphragm. Respiration process starts from external nostril. The air reaches to the nasal cavity, it moves to trachea, it reaches bronchi, bronchi to bronchioles, and at last it reaches to alveoli. Human respiratory system. Let us understand how the process of respiration takes place with the help of a diagram. You can see the structure of a human body. Firstly, the air enters through nostril. First part is nostril, nasal cavity. This is oral cavity, pharynx, epiglottis, larynx, trachea, right lung, left lung, rib. We can also call it rib cage, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, diaphragm, esophagus. Now let's understand the process of human respiratory system. Air enters through the nostrils. The hairs and the mucus traps the dust particles in the nose. It then passes through the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi and enters to the lungs. The trachea has rings of cartilage which prevents it from collapsing when there is no air in the trachea. The bronchi divides into small tubes called bronchioles, which ends in a tiny air sac called alveoli. The alveoli is supplied with blood vessels where exchange of gases takes place. The alveoli helps to increase the surface area for the exchange of gases. Epiglottis is a flap which does not allow the mixing of the air and food. The lungs is protected by ribs. It's called rib cage, and a diaphragm is present which contracts and relaxes when we breathe in and breathe out. Now let's understand what is inhalation and exhalation. When we breathe in, the muscles of the diaphragm contracts and moves downward, and the chest cavity expands and the air enters through the lungs. This is called inhalation. When we breathe out, the muscles of the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward, and the chest cavity contracts and air goes out of the lungs. That is exhalation. Let's understand with the help of a diagram. So inhalation means breathing in. So this is breathe in, whereas exhalation is breathe out. When we breathe in, the chest expands, and when we breathe out, chest contracts. This is ribs, lungs. This is diaphragm. Now, what is happening? The diaphragm contracts when we breathe in, whereas the diaphragm relaxes when we breathe out. When we breathe in air, the muscles of the diaphragm contracts and moves downward, and the chest cavity expands and the air enters into the lungs. When we breathe out, the muscles of the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward of the chest cavity, and the chest cavity contracts and the air goes out of the lungs. This is how we breathe in and breathe out. Respiration in plants. In plants, it is a gaseous exchange, and the process by which the gaseous exchange takes place is diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration. So the direction of the diffusion depends upon the environmental condition and the requirement of the plant. Now, respiration process occurs during day and night. During daytime, carbon dioxide is given out during the respiration, is used up by the process of photosynthesis. So therefore, only oxygen is released. During night time, only respiration takes place. Photosynthesis does not take place at the night time because there is no sunlight. So only respiration process takes place. Therefore, carbon dioxide is released. So respiration happens during day and night. During daytime, carbon dioxide which is given out during the respiration process is used for the process of photosynthesis. Therefore, only oxygen is released. Whereas in the night time, no photosynthesis process happens. So therefore, respiration will take place and carbon dioxide is released. In this session, we have studied about respiration process in animals and plants. In the next session, we will be studying about transportation. Thank you.